the word. Welcome to Spread Love in Organizations, a podcast for purpose-driven healthcare leaders striving to make life better around the world by leading their teams with genuine care, servant leadership, and love. I'm Naji, your host for this exciting episode from our new series focused on us as leaders. I'm joined by Johanna Hising DiFabio, Assistant Dean, Sloan Fellows MBA, and Executive MBA at MIT Sloan. Jo leads all aspects of the program by collaborating with faculty on the development of innovative curricula, co-working with global organizations on action learning labs to help them meet pressing strategic issues, and with us, students, to create a learning environment that is second to none in terms of the personal development and career enhancement. Jo is passionate about leadership and leadership development, reason why she joined MIT more than a decade ago. There's obviously no better place for that, well, even though I'm biased. And it's really reflected, I would say, in MIT Sloan's mission, which is to develop principled, innovative leaders who improve the world and to generate ideas that advance management practice. I can go on talking about you, Jo, but I'm just so thrilled to have you with me today. And we're all waiting to hear more from you.
Oh, Nazi, thank you so much for having me. I hope this will be fun and that we'll learn something together.
Jo, tell us a little bit more about your personal story to start. You know, from Sweden to the US now, being in one of the leading institutions on leadership and technology and many other things within MIT. What's in between the lines of this amazing leadership journey?
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so like you said, I was born in Sweden and still am a Swedish citizen. And we moved when I was really young to Luxembourg and then subsequently to Frankfurt, Germany. And so I always went to international schools. I really think that international community and respecting people regardless of their differences and cultures, and not just respecting, but really celebrating those differences is something that is ingrained in me from young childhood. I had amazing opportunities traveling both with my family, but through sports at school, as well as through the singing and the choirs I came to them coming to the US to study. And then I'm a hopeless romantic. So I met my husband and we moved to Boston, where I started my career in leadership at a consulting firm outside of Boston. I think an important part of my story is also that in 2021, I started having some health issues that resulted in the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. I was 22. At 22, you think you're pretty infallible and health issues is certainly not imminent for most people, and really changed my perspective on life and really helped me focus on seizing the moment, appreciating every moment that you have, being grateful for being healthy. And then came to MIT nearly 11 years ago. I can talk more about that story if you want me to, a little bit later. And right now I have two amazing daughters, 8 and 3, who challenge me in various ways every day. I also think they help me be a better human and a better leader. And then I have an amazingly supportive husband who helps us balance it all.
Thank you so much, Jo, for sharing, your journey and part of it. As you grew, you talked about, what happened to you, and you reflected on, the positive sides of being healthy and the impact that you would have in the world. And I know you many times talk to us about this, like, what is your purpose? What is the impact that you want to bring? How would you define yours today, your personal purpose?
Yeah, I talk about this, as you say, quite a bit. I think about it as my ikigai, the Japanese saying, sort of the reason I wake up in the morning. I've always just been fascinated by how adults continue to develop. So, when we're young, we go through school and there's this expectation that you're constantly learning. But as an adult, that process continues beyond college or beyond high school. And I've just always found that fascinating, that we never stop learning and we always are evolving. And so my why is feeling that I contribute in making this world a better place by graduating and developing every single year over 250 students who not only have the management and leadership skills, but are inspired to and expected by MIT to go out and make the world a better place. That it's not, they have the privilege of having this experience and they've had a privileged life that allows them to have this experience. And that going out and making more money and making businesses more effective and industries more innovative are all very important, but it needs to be more. They also need to be making this world a better place for society.
Wow, and talking about impact and how you amplify it, I love how you frame it. Right? Like every year you're amplifying it by making us as leader better and trying to improve the world. What is one trait, if there is one trait, as we go through this program, let's start with a trait and then I will go more in learnings and, capabilities that you think we need to build. But is there one trait that you see really important for leaders to have, or is it all about things we can learn?
One trait. I don't know that there's one trait. I think this goes into sort of how I think about leaders too. There's not a perfect leader. I think it's important, self-awareness maybe is one of the most important pieces, right? Is if there's not one perfect leader, you better know what your strengths are, what your developmental opportunities are, or your weaknesses are. So self-awareness may be one of them. I think empathy is also really important, and humbleness. Maybe I'll start there.
And you talked about, continuous learning as adults. I feel many times this is kind of the most challenging piece, right? We not only learning, but unlearning, as we grow, we become more experienced. We usually go back to what we know how to do, and we are practically always right. So any advices on this as you developed executives who also comes with a lot of confidence coming in? Anything you've seen there and advices you can give us?
Yeah, I think Marshall Goldsmith wrote a book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and I agree with that, and I see that a lot in people I develop on my team. Is execution is often, or being good at your job through executing is often how people get promoted within an organization. And you get to a certain level, and being able to execute as an individual contributor is no longer the most important thing. It's developing others to be able to do that for you, being able to motivate them, inspire them, develop them. And so I think it's really important to continuously evaluate what it is that your job and your team requires of you, and to be surrounded by people who are willing to tell you the truth, even when that's difficult for you to hear, and that you're creating a culture that allows people to challenge you as a leader. And I still think that's really hard because you're the boss and people want to please you. And, and so how are you creating that feedback loop in order to know how you need to be changing your behavior and how you need to be changing as a leader and evolving as a leader in order to satisfy the needs of the team and the business?
And any example you have, we always we know what happens in corporate. Academics sometimes is for those of us who are not there, we always wonder, right? Like we learn from there, but what actually happens? And I know you're an amazing, humble leader, and you lead teams, right? And you're running a program that potentially 90% of what you do, we don't even see. So with the pandemic, I'm sure tons of things have changed for you, how you led the team, how you had to transform, the challenges that you face with us, also the experience we are living as students. I'd love to hear, more about this experience, how you led your team, and maybe the second fold of the question is, what are you going to keep out of this crazy year and a half that you went through?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I mean, I think the biggest shift for us was in terms of how we were able to make decisions. And that took a lot of adjusting for me. I was so used to running the executive degree programs, how the team and I thought was the way to do it and the way we had done it for a very long time, to needing to follow MIT's guidance in terms of safety protocols and how we could interact with our students and how we could deliver this experience and the education. And that was hard. There was a lot, it was hard to navigate in terms of getting answers to the questions we had. We have a very unique population. You know this yourself, having people coming from all across the country and all across the world to get this experience. I am immensely proud of the fact that we are one of the EMBA, the MIT EMBA was one of the few programs that provided hybrid options since September of 2020, with a very rigorous safety protocol. Now that put a huge onus on our students. There's no doubt in my mind of that, which we tried to at least ease the financial burden a little bit. But you really showed the commitment of the students, that's for sure. So I think it was challenging for us to pivot as a team to be more executors of someone else's rules versus us creating that strategy and operationally delivering the way we knew that we wanted to. It was a huge challenge. My hope is that we will go back to the way it was before. I have a deep belief in empowering people, and it felt very disempowered to be in that boat. But I think, I learned a lot about myself. I think it's important for us to self-reflect during this time. I'm a huge people pleaser. And while I've always known that about myself, it really provided disservice to me, provided disservice to my team. And just, I tend to put others before myself. And myself becomes an extension. My family is myself. My team is myself. So I put every other people's needs before me and my team. And that I have a lot of making up to my team to do, I think. My next year's focus is going to be, of course, doing what we can for our students and the school, but also thinking a lot about what we can do for the team. So for me to keep is, I need to have this like self-pleasing in the front of my mind. There's a balance. And I think students had requests. They feel like they didn't get the experience that they were hoping for. And I understand that. I completely empathize with that feeling. And there are certainly things that we can do, and there are things that we can't and frankly shouldn't do. And balancing that, having the honest and empathetic conversations around that is important. But I think it's also, there are a lot of things we will continue doing. We continuously have issues of trying to find time in the space of the Fridays and Saturdays when students are on campus. Virtual has created a lot more space for us to offer other opportunities. So we will definitely continue with that.
And any learning, Joe, that from a leadership standpoint, going through this, and I know we discussed it, offline, around communication, being here for your team, etc. But any really important learning that you think as a leader now you will make sure that us as students we take from those experiences with unprecedented time and make sure we keep, because as you said, I'm feeling the word quickly forgets, right? And we go back as leaders to do what we know. But is there one thing that you think we definitely should keep in mind now moving forward?
I think empathy is so important. Everyone went through this time in different ways. And whether it was a student, a faculty, someone on my team, someone on someone else's team, it's hard to connect over Zoom. Like, you don't really you see some of the body language, but not all. Really being able to be in that space and being with them, meeting them where they are, is really important, and giving them the space to heal, to work through the trauma that they're going through. People come first. They're the ones who are doing this work. And so, whether it was a student who was really struggling, or whether it was staff members or faculty, just empathy, I think, is really important. How do you teach that? I'm asking myself that a lot. I know with the close-knit community that we develop in the EMBA, along with the amount of teamwork that I hope there's stuff that comes out of that. And of course, you have your one-on-one coaching and your, various leadership skills courses. But that's one thing I'm continuously asking myself. I think it's really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you framed it. I always say it, people first, right? Like it starts with this, how you genuinely care for them, and yeah, just don't assume how each one is living it, and be more here for them than anything else. I want to jump into a kind of a different section where I will give you one word, and then give me either a word or top of mind idea that would come to you. Sounds good?
Sound great.
Cool. So the first word, and you're passionate about this, is leadership.
I said this a little earlier. There's no perfect leader. And the more people can realize that, I think also I'm a little biased being at a very technology and engineering focused school. I think everyone's looking for the black and white answer to how do I become the perfect leader? And there is no perfect leader. There is not. And so it's not about figuring out how to be the perfect leader, in my opinion. I think it's all about figuring out who you are as a leader and what your strengths are, where you're not strong, and how do you then round that out with various people on your team? How do you ensure you have the diversity of opinion on your team, people who will challenge you? So, there's no perfect leader, and you're always evolving. And every situation requires a different kind of leader. And so how are you assessing that, right? It's really complex. And I think there's so many paradoxes with leadership too. I think about this all the time. So many of my strengths are why I'm in the position I am today. And it also gets me in trouble, right? Like the people pleasing. It means that customer service is something that I care deeply about and I ask for all the time. And it can go too far. And it's the same thing around empathy. I care deeply about my people, but I think at times people can take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's all about the balance, as you said.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
What about DE and I?
Hugely important. I care about equality. I'm glad this is in nearly every conversation I'm having today, whether it is about finding new team members on my team, ensuring that we have, less bias. No bias is not possible. So less bias in some of our decision-making processes, all the way through ensuring that people have access to this degree. I think these degrees, I struggle a lot with how do we ensure people who've had less privileged lives have access to this kind of a degree so that they have the opportunities to do what they can do, knowing that they didn't have the same opportunities, they didn't go to the same schools, they don't make the same kind of money, and yet the tuition's the same. So how do we find more diverse candidates for our programs? How do we make the opportunity more accessible to them?
So I'd love to hear your thoughts about, equity, right? Like more from, I would say, an academic point and even personal, if you want. But this is something that is debated a lot. I think we talked a lot about diversity, inclusion, like a lot of companies are working hard to it. Now we're adding this equity piece that I just love. I think it's crucial. But I would love to hear your thoughts about what does it mean? And how do you think we can strive as leaders to make sure that equality becomes a reality? Because I think we're still far away from that.
Yeah, I agree that we're not there. It is hugely important. I think it needs to be. We need to continue talking about it, and we need to put processes in place, right? Like and we need to make the extra effort, and we need to, especially for those of us who are in a place of privilege. I think recognizing where our privilege is really important, and recognizing the inequities in this world in order to create processes and opportunities where there isn't access and equality. So, and I just think we all need to be thinking about this. We all need to be sharing what works, because I think all of us are trying to figure, at least the people I speak with, all of us care about this deeply, but how do you make it happen is hard. There's a book out there, sorry, I'm a total book nerd, called What Works, and now I'm forgetting the author's name. But it is a great book on how do you create processes and what works. Well, all of what works. So, what works in terms of mentorship or sponsorship and what doesn't. And I think that's really important for us all to know, so that we don't continue trying things that don't work.
Yeah, and I really love your advices. I'm gonna take those. You talked about first continuing to talk about it, right? I think it's a very important first step. I kind of always, push my team to have healthy debates, and I think many times we're afraid, right? Because it's touchy discussions. You're always afraid to sound wrong. People are afraid even these days to give their real ideas, right? Because oh my God, how am I going to be perceived? But this is like, there's no social evolution if you don't debate, right? Like, and I think, well, you come from a country that I really believe you guys in Sweden have done amazing work, improving those things, because you say what you think, you do it, you debate it, right? So I think there's learnings also from where you come. And the second thing that you said, I've never thought of it exactly that way, but I think it will help a lot, is recognizing the inequities and saying them, right? Like really stating them from a privileged standpoint and saying, okay, well, those are the inequalities that exist in the world, and how can we fix them is important, rather than just saying conceptually.
Yeah, and well, first I should say, Sweden still has a lot of things to figure out themselves. So there's that. I mean, I think the piece I've really appreciated about your class specifically is that you've not shied away from some more difficult conversations and actually created a forum to debate and have conversations about this. This is what I dream of my students doing. I think you're right. There is this fear of saying the wrong thing. I hope we create a safe enough environment where people can feel like they can say the wrong thing and they're not going to be judged for their entire life about that one thing that they say, and rather educate them around a way to say it better, or better understand what it was that they were trying to say. I struggle with this. I didn't grow up in the US. I sound like I grew up in the US, and I don't know that as much as I've tried to educate myself around the racial inequalities in this country, I don't know, I'm not an expert. And so when, Black Lives Matters resurfaced last year to become even more important topic to talk about. And, as much as it pains to see the painful experiences it takes in this country in order for us to have these difficult conversations, I remember talking to HR at MIT saying, I don't even know what to say. And she said, say that. Say you don't know what to say. And, being authentic and continuing my own journey and my expectation of my team to continue to educate themselves, and the expectation of my students that they continue to educate themselves, whether they're from this country or not, but also recognizing where my students are coming from or where my team is coming from. So when I do this for the Sloan Fellows program, racial inequality may not be relevant in their countries. It's 75% international. So how can we make sure that they, it was so heartwarming to see that with such an international program, 2/3 of the class have diversity, equity, and inclusion as priorities in their organizations and in their countries. And so we need to, I think we really need to harness this conversation and this power and willingness to want to move the needle. And let's continue working on it. Let's not let, a pandemic or something else become more important, because I hope in my lifetime we can create a better world.
No, totally. And I think, unfortunately, the pandemic and moment of crisis only show how inequalities are even more, right? Like we definitely saw it within the US and outside. Yeah. And I'm exactly like you. I moved to the US 2 years ago, so I had to educate myself last year, leading a large team, what this means, right? What do we mean by diversity? And it's different, as you said, across the world, but we're all different in some place. I always remind myself, when I was born in Lebanon, I was the same as many. Moving to France, I was different. In the US, I'm different, right? And every place and somewhere in the world, we're different and unique. So it's important to keep this.
Yeah.
The last word, Joe, would be spread love in organizations.
As I said, I'm a hopeless romantic, and I think too some of my upbringing really brings love to me is everything in this world, and it may be corny. I don't care. It is. I think it is being loved, spreading love. I will tell you that the empathy and love that I feel for my team, for my students, for this institution, makes me a better human, makes me a better leader. One of my proudest moments, it was when one of my students sat in their last session and talked about the sense of belonging and love they felt by coming into this community. And like you said, we're all different, but and I think people feel it too when they meet us, when they see us. This is, for some of us at this institution, this is not about a job. This is about fulfilling that mission of developing principled, innovative leaders who improve the world. But it's also about creating a community that people want to be a part of, that people want to be their best. They want to learn. They want to make a difference. And I hope it's about recognizing people's differences and appreciating and celebrating those, and helping people, helping not just themselves reaching their full potential, but helping each other and the classmates reach their full potential too. I was on WhatsApp the other day and saw that one of my Sloan fellows had sent an email saying, I'm about to interview for the financial industry. Does someone have a couple of minutes to give me some insight? And the slew of emails messages that came in, and not just about, trying to provide some advice to the student or the alumni, but also trying, just encouragement and best wishes. That's what this to me is about.
Yeah. Again, I'm biased and I don't want to do a lot of, advertisement, but I can tell you, Joe, it's, I literally learned what community means moving to the US and even more within MIT. It's just, it's incredible with how much short amount of time you manage to create this type of culture of belonging and, just brilliant people being here, trying to help each other no matter what. So I can definitely attest for that.
Yeah. It's not one person, right? I could probably spend an entire, could spend an entire hour just talking about community and how do you create community. It takes everyone, so.
Any final word of wisdom, Jo, for leaders around the world or future leaders, like your daughters? I have 2 daughters too. I would love to hear your words of wisdom as we are helping them grow in a better world.
Yeah, we have, it's funny, we have DiFabio house rules on our fridge. And I recently had someone over who was like, "Oh, Jo, this was totally you. You put this house rule on the list." And it's something we co-create, so it's not just me. But it's something, now I can't even remember what exactly it says, but it's something to the effect of have courage to speak your opinions and your truth. And I think that's important. And I think I need to remind myself of that. I think it's very humbling for me to be a part of this podcast. It's humbling every day to come to work and be the assistant dean of these 2 amazing programs. And having the courage to speak up when there are inequalities or when there are things that could be done better or differently, and doing that in a kind way is hugely important. And then I just think I listened to and have read a lot of Brene Brown's work around vulnerability and just recognizing that imperfect is perfection, and we are all imperfect, and that's okay, and that should be celebrated, and we're all a work in progress. And the only way we can be our best selves is by having people around us who also want that and are courageous enough to share the gift of feedback. And and for us to actually want to do that, right? I think.
I will take, Jo, your DiFabio house rules if you allow me to do so and rework it. But it's so powerful. It's a powerful way, being efficient, effective, and the courage to speak your opinion and truth always. This is powerful. Yeah. Thank you so much again, Jo, for such an inspiring discussion. You're a great, humble leader. You talked about humility, and you truly are. Thanks so much for being here today.
Najee, thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for listening to Spread Love in Organizations podcast. Follow us on social media and connect with us on SpreadLoveIO.com. And most importantly, spread love in your organizations and spread the word around you to inspire others and amplify this movement our world so desperately needs.